The sign read, $5 for the beast. Most people passed by without a glance. But when the little girl begged her father to buy the dog, the officer froze. He knew something no one else did. This wasn't an ordinary animal. This was a secret, waiting to explode. The late afternoon sun bathed the small town in a golden glow as Officer Daniels strolled down Main Street, his daughter's tiny hand tucked securely in his own. Emily, dressed in her favorite red dress, skipped happily beside him, her braids bouncing with each step. For her, it was just another walk with Daddy, but for him, it was a rare, quiet moment away from duty. That peace shattered when Emily suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her wide eyes locked on a figure at the corner of the street. Chained to a rusted lamppost sat a German shepherd, his head lowered, his ears drooping as though the weight of the world pressed on his back. A battered cardboard sign lay propped against the post, $5 for the beast. Emily tugged her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice filled with innocence and curiosity. "Why is he called a beast?" Daniels followed her gaze, his chest tightening. The dog's coat was rough, scars visible beneath the fur. But it wasn't the scars that made him freeze, it was the eyes. Eyes he recognized. Eyes that told a story of battles fought and loyalty. Betrayed that Emily's soft voice cut through his thoughts. "Daddy, can I buy that dog?" The name Beast wasn't new to Officer Daniels. He'd heard it whispered in the precinct, muttered in coffee shops, even shouted by frightened townsfolk. This dog had a reputation, one that spread like wildfire through every corner of the community. Children crossed the street when they saw him, and adults lowered their voices, warning each other to stay away. Rumors painted the German shepherd as violent and unpredictable. Stories claimed he had bitten his handler, lunged at strangers, even snapped his leash to attack. The truth, however, was far less clear. No one seemed to know the full story, only that wherever the beast went, fear followed. Daniels studied him now, sitting chained and broken on the sidewalk. The scars on his muzzle weren't the marks of a monster, but of survival. His body carried the weight of battles fought, not crimes committed. Yet still, people chose the cruel label, beast. Emily, however, saw none of that darkness. Her gaze was pure, unclouded by gossip. She saw sadness in the dog's eyes, a longing no rumor could disguise. To her, he wasn't a creature to fear. He was simply alone, and it was in that moment she whispered, "He doesn't look scary to me, Daddy." Emily's small fingers tightened around her father's hand as she gazed at the chained shepherd. Her eyes shimmered with compassion, so deep and unshakable that Daniels felt his resolve wavering before she even spoke. "Daddy," she whispered, "can we take him home? Please." Her voice carried none of the town's fear, none of its judgment. To Emily, the dog wasn't a beast. He was a soul abandoned, waiting for someone to believe in him. Daniel's jaw tightened. He had faced hardened criminals without flinching, but the plea of his little girl pierced through his armor. "Sweetheart," he began carefully, searching for the right words. He wanted to warn her, to protect her from disappointment or danger. But Emily's eyes, wide and glistening with hope, left him speechless. "Please, Daddy," she begged softly, pressing closer to his side. "He needs someone, and I think he needs us." Daniel stood frozen, caught between duty and love. The father in him wanted to give his daughter everything her heart longed for. The officer in him warned of risk, danger, and consequences. The German shepherd lifted his head slightly, meeting Daniel's stare. For a heartbeat, man and dog locked eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. With a heavy sigh, Daniels reached into his pocket, pulling out a few crumpled bills. He handed them to the shopkeeper who had left the sign, his voice steady but low. "I'll take him." Whispers rippled through the street. Townsfolk shook their heads, muttering warnings, but Emily beamed, her face glowing with joy. Daniels stepped forward, unfastening the rusty chain. To his surprise, the dog didn't resist. No growl, no snap, only a slow, weary bow of his head, as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. Daniels kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting the dog to bare his teeth or snap. But he didn't. He just stared out the window, his eyes distant, like someone remembering another life. When they arrived, Emily bounded into the yard, tugging gently at the leash. "Come on, boy," she urged, her laughter bright and unafraid. The dog followed, not with the eagerness of a puppy, but with the slow, careful steps of someone learning to trust again. Inside, Emily dropped to her knees. "I'll call him Max," she declared proudly. The name softened the air, replacing beast with something hopeful. Daniel stood nearby, arms crossed, watching every move. He couldn't deny it. The shepherd seemed calmer around Emily, almost protective. Still, he kept his guard up. This was only the beginning, and trust had to be earned. But as Emily giggled when Max laid his head gently in her lap, Daniel saw something shift. For the first time, the so-called beast looked less like a monster and more like family. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the walls around Max began to crumble. At first, Daniels kept his distance, never letting his guard drop. But Emily treated Max as if he had always belonged. She read him bedtime stories, tucked scraps of her breakfast toast under the table, and whispered, "You're safe now." One afternoon, Emily darted toward the porch steps too quickly, her foot slipping on the edge. Daniels barely had time to react before Max lunged forward, not with teeth bared, but with surprising gentleness. He nudged her back onto balance, his body shielding her from a fall. Emily squealed with laughter, wrapping her arms around his neck. Daniels froze, his heart pounding. That hadn't been aggression, it had been protection. Again and again, Max showed signs of loyalty. He barked at stray dogs that strayed too close, yet lay quietly at Emily's feet while she played with her dolls. Daniels began to notice something else too. Max's movements weren't random. They were precise, disciplined, almost trained. This wasn't the behavior of a wild beast. It was the instinct of a dog who had once served a purpose, a protector stripped of his duty, waiting for a second chance to IT first. He thought it was nothing, the wind, perhaps. But then came the unmistakable creak of a window sliding open. His instincts sharpened instantly. Before Daniels could even reach for his weapon, Max was already up, his ears rigid, his body coiled with tension. The intruders slipped into the house, their faces masked, their steps calculated. But they hadn't calculated Max. With a sudden, thunderous bark, he charged, placing himself squarely between Emily and the threat. His growls echoed like rolling thunder, a sound that froze the men in their tracks. One of them lunged, raising a crowbar, but Max was faster. In a blur, he knocked the weapon aside, pinning the man to the ground with a force that left no room for doubt. The other stumbled back, panicked by the fury in Max's eyes. Daniels rushed in, weapon drawn, heart racing. Yet what struck him most wasn't Max's ferocity, it was his control. He hadn't harmed Emily, hadn't lashed out blindly. Every move was calculated, protective, precise. For the first time, Daniels saw not a beast, but a guardian. Max lay near Emily, who was still, fast asleep, unaware of the danger that had just brushed past her life. Daniels couldn't shake the precision of Max's actions, the way he had disarmed, defended, and restrained with the skill of a seasoned professional. Old contacts, fellow officers, anyone who might know the truth behind the so-called beast. And finally, a name surfaced. Max had once been a decorated K-9, trained for police service. During a mission gone wrong, Max had been injured and misunderstood. His aggression, born of trauma and pain, was mistaken for uncontrollable violence. He was discharged, discarded, and eventually abandoned. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the dog now curled protectively beside his daughter. The memory of that sign, $5 for the beast, burned in his chest. Max hadn't been a monster. He had been a soldier left behind, carrying scars no one cared to understand. And in Emily's innocent love, he had found the chance to be more than his past. Word of that night spread quickly through the town. The same people who once crossed the street to avoid the beast now whispered in awe about his bravery. Children pointed with wide eyes, not in fear, but in wondered. At home, Max was no longer a stray chained to a lamppost. He was Emily's shadow, her protector, her best friend. Daniels, once wary, now saw him as family. The monster the world had rejected had revealed his true nature. He wasn't a beast at all. He was a guardian, redeemed by love, restored by trust.